Welcome back to Today with Dr. Kaye. I'm Dr. Kaye Whitehead. Folks, we're going to put a pause on the conversation for just a moment so I can talk to one of our partners, Jean-Luc Park, the Senior Director of Social Impact Funds at TEDCO. TEDCO's been a constant and consistent supporter of WEAA and Today with Dr. Kaye. How are you, Jean-Luc?
On your show.
No, it's a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk about the social impact funds. Exactly what are they?
Absolutely. Happy to talk about that. Just a quick disclaimer that these opinions are my own and do not reflect the positions of TEDCO at the state of Maryland. We are in a new era, so I figured it was responsible to do that.
Yes.
But the social impact funds are one of several funds based out of TEDCO, and TEDCO is essentially the state of Maryland's venture capital investment program. The social impact funds have a mandate. The Builder Fund has a requirement of no less than 50% SEDI ownership of the company, and the Inclusion Fund has a 30% requirement for SEDI ownership. Other than that, you must be a qualified Maryland business, which means you must be based in Maryland. You must have more than half of your workforce in Maryland, and you must be a technology-based company. One of the key things that we're asked to be as stewards of the state money is to make the type of investments that would have the same risk-return profile as other investments made by other parties. So we are looking for the same type of venture capital returns that the early stage risk requires.
So in laying out these social impact funds, and to be clear, are the companies that are eligible for funding, do they have to be of a certain size? Do they have to have a certain initiative in place?
No size. I mean, a founder is considered to be a workforce of one. So we are willing to be the first investor in, the first institutional investor.
I do believe we have Jean-Luc back, though. Jean-Luc, are you back with us?
I am, thank you.
Yes. So what we were talking about, which companies would be eligible. And you said even a company with one founder, a company of one, because TEDCO would look to be the first one in terms of funding.
Absolutely. We understand that can be our role, but we are looking for credible, qualified, real companies. And so it's one of the challenges. You can be by yourself, but usually you will have other folks who understand, are experts, or understand the industry. So it's not unusual for us to invest in a workforce of one, but they have consultants, friends, other folks engaged. They have people who are on advisory boards, people who are experts in the industry, or potential customers who are already signed up and wanting to buy from them as soon as they're a product to buy. All of this adds credibility and support to making an investment. And so there's a lot of talk of the guys in garage and early stage technology startups, and there are plenty of those out there. But the more you can de-risk, the better and more attractive you become as an investment.
So in looking at this, can you talk a little bit about TEDCO's role and then the available tools that people can use to get the support they need, I guess, to even submit an application for this?
Absolutely. TEDCO has many activities in addition to the investment team. We have our venture development group, which really focuses on working with the ecosystem and helping the incubators, including the ones at the HBCUs and around the state, to support entrepreneurs who are trying to understand how to speak the language of investing and how to present themselves in the best way possible for the greatest chance of success. There are programs like the I-Corps program, where entrepreneurs are required to really go out and talk to their customer base, because the reality is your customers are the only ones who really make sure you're successful. If no one buys from you, you don't have a business. So you have to make sure that you are prepared for that. There's also a certain presentation and expectation that investors have when they're dealing with entrepreneurs. And there are many incubators who are very good at supporting you and helping you hone your message so that you be seen as a reasonable risk profile, because the risk with every one of these early stage startups is extremely high. And in order to compensate the risk return that a good steward requires, you have to be able to address all the other factors, all the other elements, to make sure that people feel comfortable that you are a good idea to put their money in. And especially at TEDCO, because we're using money from Annapolis, we have to be good stewards to make sure that the state's money is well taken care of.
Now, in terms of sustainability for the work that people are doing, that they look to do with the social impact funds, do they have to have a plan laid out for what that would look like?
I guess I'm struggling with the word sustainability, but the idea is that if you're not self-sustaining, you can't be sustainable. So we are looking to understand, can you be profitable, right? And when will you hit that break-even profit? Because we're an investor, we're not a benefactor.
Okay, that's
And
what I
we
was
can
trying to
only,
get to.
okay, and we can only invest in for-profit companies. We cannot support nonprofit entities, and we can only focus on technology companies. The state of Maryland has many other organizations to support a wide variety of economic activity within the state. TEDCO is just one of many players within the ecosystem.
How does this tie in? Just so that we can understand, because we've had your CEO on before. We've had other people from TEDCO. They've talked about, for example, the pre-seed builder fund, the inclusion fund. How is this tied into that? How is it different from it? Can you get multiple grants coming out of TEDCO?
And again, to clarify, the venture development group and some other portions will do grants. The social impact funds is the umbrella group for both the inclusion and the builder fund.
Okay.
So these are investments. And so we are looking to own a percentage of the company at the end of the day. We will start with convertible notes, but in a successful round of financing, at some point, TEDCO, with their investment, will own 2%, 5% of the company. And we will be along with you for the ride all the way up to your exit.
Okay, good. No, this is really interesting, because I was looking at it online in anticipation of our conversation. I was looking at how the Builder Fund typically invests in amounts up to $200,000, and you mentioned the convertible notes and how the inclusion funds are there, for people that have these investment opportunities that are overlooked by traditional sources of investment and finances, sometimes due to economic disadvantage. With that, in terms of this pre-seed technology, when you have these ideas, when you as a company, at least a company of one, as you noted, and you would, in terms of it's an early stage technology startup grant, you have an idea, you have a plan, you have a company, you come to the table with that. Like, I want to be clear, telling people that this is not the grant you go to, the startup funds you go to if you just have an idea. You need to be already established as a company, even if it's just a company of one.
Even if it's just a company of one. But, there are other groups that are providing the type of grants to help you determine whether or not there's something real there. The NSF does a lot of these types of early stage support with their funding, NIH and other groups. And that adds to the credibility that your science or technology is valid in there. Other people have looked at it, because I can't be an expert in everything. I fully understand that. I'm an expert in investing. And the technology, I have to have comfort, and I have a good team with me to help me understand, is this the right type of technology? Does it make sense? But then, does the investment profile make sense? Are you going after too small a market so that the returns will never be viable? Are you going after the wrong type of market or too general a market? Because while many technologies can be used by a lot of folks, there's usually a population that's going to need it more, and they'll pay more, they'll pay a premium for it. Do you know that market space? Have you shown the credibility that you can hone your message and your focus? Do you know the people who are going to be your eventual customers? Do you know who your people are going to be your eventual buyers of your company, right? And that's one of the challenges I find with early stage investors. We are all here on this planet, and we have several rights, right? Food in the belly, roof over your head, shirt on your back. But as a company, you don't have that right to exist, right? You're an artificial construct. And so the only guys who give you that right to exist are going to be your customers, and they do it by paying you cash. So how are you going to be there to facilitate that? Why are they paying you? What are the benefits you're giving to them that are going to be greater than any other benefits that they could get from your alternatives? And so one of the things we look for is, who's your competition? And you always have competition, and you always have to understand why that competition exists, even if that competition is inertia, and they just want to do what they've done to get what they've got. So all of these elements are going to be part of what makes a investment grade company. And the Social Impact Builder Fund, what we found is that the really good companies, because they're founded by SEDI founders, tend to be extremely robust. Right. And it's unfortunate, because I don't have to explain to your audience why an SEDI founder has difficulty fundraising. Right. But the really good ones, they're still available for funds from the social impact funds. And unfortunately, that's the competition, right? Because they're not getting funded by many other parties out there. The brilliant entrepreneurs, the ones who have been hustling, the ones who have customers, the ones who would hit most metrics that anyone would want to see, they still have to come down and ask for funding from TEDCO, because TEDCO is not the easiest investor out there. And there are other sources of capital, right? But TEDCO sometimes becomes seen as a reasonable source because the doors have been slammed shut on other proven ideas. that have shown real traction in the market space but have not gotten the funding that you would have expected had they been run by somebody else.
Well, two things that popped out to me when I was taking a look at this. One is that it notes that at least 30% ownership of the company has to be owned by one or more individuals who have demonstrated social and economic disadvantage.
Yeah.
So part of it is kind of zeroing in on very specific, economically challenged and socially disadvantaged communities.
That is correct. And we get that awkward language from the federal government.
Right.
Technically it's 13 CFR 124, which is essentially the definition used by the SBA 8A program.
And then, of course, the second part is for at least 1 year after receiving the TEDCO investment, the company needs to be controlled and managed by one or more individuals who have demonstrated social and economic disadvantage.
And that is the statute that describes the types of funds that companies that can receive funds from the Inclusion Fund. That is correct.
Now, I wonder, Mr. Park, with everything that's happening in Washington, particularly some of the new executive orders around diversity, equity, and inclusion, does any of this fall under that? Is there a danger that this is going to be impacted, that since the language you said you pull comes directly from the federal government?
Again, I'm not qualified to answer those questions. The good news is my lawyers are working on it, and you can ask my CEO the next time he's on your show, because I do not have an answer. I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate at least you letting us know, because we definitely, when you said the federal government with the language, I started thinking, oh my goodness, so much is happening and so much is changing. But in the immediate present, which is immediate, people can now apply for this. This is now available. It is now open. And if you meet the criteria, I just gave you two of the four that I have noted here, folks. The founders, officers, and managers agree to receive executive support and have at least one full-time employee. If you have that, then I urge you to go on to TEDCO.com and to take a look at applying to the Social Impact Fund.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the website is tedcomd.com. And because this is not a grant, we are still looking to make good investments. So there are many companies that do qualify, but will not receive funding because the other higher quality investments are a better deployment of capital for us.
Okay.
So unfortunately, we can't say yes to everyone, but we are limited in our funds, even at TEDCO.
Now, do the companies have to be in Baltimore or any part of Maryland? I just want to make sure, can companies apply from anywhere? That was a question that we just received.
Anywhere in Maryland. Your headquarters, your principal business office must be based in Maryland, and more than half of the workforce must be in Maryland. There are several other requirements, such as you must be in business for less than 7 years. Most startups are at that stage. You cannot have received more than $30 million of financial support. Again, most startups don't hit those numbers, but those are the two main ones, workforce and location headquarters.
All right. Thank you so much, Jean-Luc Park from TEDCO. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you laying this out for my listeners in the hopes that many of them will be able to both apply and hopefully receive these startup funds.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Kaye.
Thank you.